Okay, hi everybody. Here we are in week 5. Okay, these are rapidly kind of tying up things here. And this week we have three chapters to look at. Chapters 11, 14, and 16. Okay, and the focus this week is on reason. Okay, reason, utility, equality of opportunity. But reason is really the focus. See, up to this point we've looked at government. Creating a government, what should a government look like, what duties should the government have, what power should we give the government, what's the legitimate power we give to the government, democracy, the pros and cons of the kind of the governments we develop. But now we look at the duties and obligations of the citizen this week, right? And all of these thinkers focus in on the notion of reason, the idea that they have to be, as citizens, you have to think about your role in society. You have to think about what's your obligation to other people in society, not just to you. And I think in modern society in particular, there's a focus on rights and there's a focus on self-interest and the notion of what I can do, what's best for me, what am I allowed to do, what does the Constitution say my rights are. But what this week's thinkers focus in on is they tell us, it's more than just about you. It's about your role in the society, and you have to think about your role in society. Okay, so we got to move away from that individual. It's me, and think about the us in it. Immanuel Kant is the first philosopher, one of the great thinkers of all time, and Kant focuses on duties. He talks about moral duties, ethical duties, judicial duties, and what he's getting at in there with moral duties, he's saying as a person, you have an obligation to kind of create, this notion of understanding there's kind of the basic right things to do. You know what right is. If through reason we can figure out what right behavior is. And you have an obligation to do that. Okay? Through your ethical duties, you then have an obligation to treat people fairly, equally. Okay? Again, as you know, I don't care much for the word fair, but then the notion of treating people with respect, with dignity. You have whether you agree with them or not, you have an obligation to respect those people. And then judicially, you have an obligation to follow the law. Again, you may not like the law. The point is you have to follow the law because without laws, you have no civil society. You see? So what Kant is getting at there is what he calls categorical imperatives. You have to think of people as ends, products, equals. You can't think of people as using them as a means to an end. You can't use people for, I want to use this group because this is my goal. See, he's saying that's wrong. See, categorical imperatives basically he's saying is you have to treat people exactly the same way as you'd want people to treat you. Think back to our religious philosophers. It kind of weaves its way back in again, right? So you have to respect people. You have to respect the opinion of people. And you have to treat people as equal. Doesn't matter if you like them. Doesn't matter if you agree with them. You have an obligation to respect them, to treat them just as you would want them to treat you. So and he says we can do that through reason. Just think it through, okay? See, then we get to Mill. And Mill then is a little more applicable in the sense that he talks about utility. What's the best we can do for the society? What's the most useful way we can behave? What's the most reasonable laws we can create? You see, again, utility, not majority. Like democracy, the majority, I have 51%, I can make you do what I want. Mill says, no, it's not that. It's really what's best for all of society, whether the majority likes it or not, because sometimes the majority can be wrong, you see? So he looks at that and he says, this is what utility really is, finding out how people can respond. See, all of this is about people. See, Kant talks about, as citizen, here's our obligation now. See, all up the first 4 weeks, we talked about government and their duties. See, now we're talking about us. And Mill says the same thing. Your duty as a citizen, okay, is to think about what's the best way you can behave for the utility, for the good of all society. What actions can we create in our society that's best for all of us? Okay, that very utilitarian perspective as you read about. And then he focuses on civil discourse. That may be the most important thing we read about with Mill is this notion of you must respect everybody's opinion, very much like Kant. But Mill takes it a step further and says, even if there's just one person who disagrees with everybody else, that one person's opinion is just as valuable. You can't discount somebody's opinion because you don't like it. You can't discount somebody's opinion because you don't agree with it. And in a democracy, you can't discount somebody's opinion because so many more people disagree with that or don't think it's correct. He said the only way civil society can exist through reason is for us to think about it. You see, and what Mill offers up, which I think is very, very good, he says, whatever opinion you have is just as valid as mine. But what Mill says is, you have to be able to explain your opinion. You can't just throw your opinion out there and say, there it is. See, Mill would say, you need to be able to explain it. And if you can't explain it, then maybe you need to rethink your opinion. Doesn't matter if you want to believe it or not. You have to be able to explain why. And what Mill would also say, the dirty little secret of reason is, sometimes through reason you find out, I might be wrong. And I might have to rethink my position because after civil discourse and thinking about my responsibility to society and trying to create the utility of society, I might find out that I'm on the wrong path. Okay? Very important. And then last, we look at our conservative thinkers, Burke, Tocqueville, and Oakeshott, and the notion there of where the conservative thinkers, and again, we got to get beyond the political modern day politics, liberal conservative, and think philosophically. Philosophically, the liberal wants to expand rights for all of society, and the conservative looks at tradition and says we can change, but we have to be able to explain why we want to change. Tocqueville talks about habits of the heart, right? The way people behave. And Tocqueville says you don't have to fear self-interest, but you have to be aware of self-interest, right? And if we're going to change things in society, you really have to have a thoughtful process in which to think it through and go, okay, here's why we want to change, okay? Democracy is a great thing, but again, with our conservative thinkers in particular, right? What is our role as citizens in the society? Okay? There's nothing wrong with thinking about yourself and your family and all of that, but you can't think of that in exclusion or separately from the society. Everything has to blend in through. So our conservative thinkers are going to argue that change is good and change can be positive, but the end goal is still about the best for society. So you really got to think about why you want these changes. Changes for change's sake can be harmful. It might sound good right now, but what are the long-term effects of it? You got to think this through. Okay? So that's what the conservative thinkers offer up. The notion that it's not that we don't want to progress as a society, because we do, but you have to be very thoughtful. You have to use reason and explain that reason why. So the conservatives basically conservative thinkers are taking what Kant and Mill are putting out there and saying, that's correct, they make perfect sense. Use reason. Use reason and think it through, because that way everybody has equal opportunity. Doesn't mean everybody's going to get the same thing. It's not equality of condition, but equal opportunity is you have a chance to do what you want. You have the opportunity. It's available for everybody. Okay? All right. And in this week, remember our course project is due, right? So if you have any questions, last minute questions about the project or anything, please contact me, as that's rapidly getting upon us. Okay. No paper this week, just the course project. Okay, even though we have the reflection, and please look through. It's a classic reflection this week on the notion of a train heading down the tracks and you having to make a decision about which way to take the train. A moral, ethical dilemma that you have to kind of sort through. Okay? Again, if you have any questions, never hesitate to contact me. Have a good week now.